included Christian ministry, anti-apartheid activism, mediation and peacekeeping, the pursuit of social justice, pastoral care, teaching and writing, all sustained for a period of over 60 years. He stands too as one of Rhodes University's most distinguished alumni, having graduated 63 years ago with a degree in theology and philosophy. His years here an important formative phase in his life, the study of theology, confirming his calling into the church, the philosophy courses, instilling a capacity for independent thought and fearless questioning, the teaching of the renowned Rhodes Professor of Philosophy, Danke Wusthazen, particularly inspirational. And it was at Rhodes too that he first engaged in anti-apartheid activism when joining the protest march in 1959. His ministry in the Methodist Church began in the Western Cape, serving in various churches in the Cape Town area. Among his first assignments was to act as part-time chaplain to Robben Island prisons, making monthly trips there, meeting with renowned prisoners such as Robert Sobukwe and Nelson Mandela, before his chaplaincy was terminated by the state late in 1964 for spurious security reasons. There followed in 1967 appointment as the Methodist minister in Cape Town's District 6, just after it had been declared a white area under the notorious Group Areas Act, at once prompting him to lead protests against the forced removal of District 6's residents, while at the same time striving to promote racial integration by drawing whites into his congregation. In 1972 came a transfer to Johannesburg and an ensuing 20-year ministry in the volatile inner city. In time taking on the leadership of the Central Methodist Church and again endeavouring to bring racial integration to a congregation which had long been predominantly white. In the mid-1970s, Peter Storey became an executive member of the South African Council of Churches, the SACC, and later its president. During the June 1976 youth uprising, he gave special support to SAC staff working in Soweto, also providing sanctuary for youth fleeing from police brutality. During his 15-year headship, the Central Methodist Church became a centre of church opposition to apartheid, the site of numerous anti-apartheid meetings and memorial services for slain activists. In the process, becoming a target of the apartheid security apparatus, having to endure raids and tear gassing by armed police on a number of occasions. In 1984 came promotion to two positions: presiding bishop of the Methodist Church of Southern Africa, covering 5 Southern African countries, and bishop of the Central District of the Methodist Church. The apartheid government always demanded that the church should stay out of politics. They meant, of course, churches that opposed apartheid, as it was happy to enjoy the Dutch Reformed Church's political support for the system. Peter Storey was at the forefront of church anti-apartheid opposition in the 1980s, co-leading an ecumenical delegation to the United Nations, the US Congress, and 6 European parliaments to press for international action against the policy of forced removals, joining protest marches when such marches were illegal, working closely with Archbishop Tutu in the quest to build a just society, the two going on to enjoy a 46-year friendship. Such activities brought danger. In the early 1980s, he and Tutu tried to visit Lutheran ministers who were being detained and tortured in Venda, only for the two bishops to be apprehended by security police who drove them into the bush and threatened to shoot them. On other occasions in the late 1980s, Bishop Storey had to endure arrests and detentions. Noteworthy too was his contribution during the turbulent transition to democracy in the early 1990s, co-chairing the Witzwil Regional Peace Committee, comprising political, business, community and security organisations, training 5,000 peace monitors to intervene and reduce political violence in the Greater Johannesburg region. Add to this Bishop Storey's other achievements. In the late 1960s, founding South Africa's first Lifeline, a 24-hour telephone-based suicide prevention and crisis intervention centre, later assisting in the establishment of other such centres around the country. Launching preschool children's centres in Soweto, among others. And in the mid-1990s, the founder and first chairperson of Gun-Free South Africa, a body to campaign for stricter gun control legislation in the country. There has been too a stint in academic life, from 1999 to 2006, holding the distinguished chair in the practice of Christian ministry at the prestigious Duke University in the US. Also an author with 5 books to his name. What has sustained Bishop Storey's wide-ranging endeavours over these 6 decades or more? It would seem that his faith has been paramount, but with this has come a set of values, ethical concerns, a deep compassion, and key guiding principles. Among these, an insistence on truth-telling without fear of the consequences, the importance of empathy, the imperative to call out holders of power and make them accountable. Hence his open letter to President Ramaphosa earlier this year, imploring him to show moral courage as the country's leader. I'm sure Bishop Storey would also want mention of his late wife, Elizabeth, an activist in her own right, who gave him wholehearted support during their 54 years of marriage. Bishop Storey has been awarded 3 honorary doctorates in the United States. Today, Rhodes is proud to be the first South African university to accord such an honour, 63 years after his first graduation here in 1960. An honorary doctorate awarded for his role as a mediator and peacemaker, for a Christian ministry that has questioned the orthodoxies of the Church and called it out when it failed to address pressing political and social issues. For his committed, non-violent activism against injustice, especially during the last 2 decades of the apartheid era. For his fundamental humanity, care for the oppressed and downtrodden, for his pursuit of social justice, all given expression in ongoing, active, fearless engagement. He serves as a fine role model for graduates, indeed for all young people who can be inspired to follow his lead. Mr. Chancellor, I have the honour to request you to confer on Peter Storey the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa.
Chancellor, Judge Lexampati, Vice Chancellor, Professor Sizwe Nobisela, this incredible faculty and staff that you have in this amazing university, parents, families, loved ones of those who will graduate today. Let me first congratulate this impressive cohort of masters and doctoral graduates. I recognize some of you because we were on the same bus trying to get out of Cape Town, and we arrived here at midnight. And I also heard you talk a little bit amongst one another, wondering who this on-doc was going to be. Who was he? Welcome to all of you. It's just marvelous to see you. Your presence here represents thousands of hours of study and research. You've overcome countless obstacles and frustrations as you've worked for the prize you will receive today. Therefore, today is your day. Enjoy it to the full. And I don't have to tell you of the sacrifice, as the Vice-Chancellor mentioned, made by your loved ones to bring you to this day. So moms and dads and spouses and lovers and partners and sisters and brothers and children, congratulations to you all. I do congratulate. To the Senate and Council of Rhodes University, thank you for honouring me in this way. It is very humbling. It's 64 years since I left this campus, holding a precious bachelor's degree in my hands. But I've never ceased to be grateful for the life lessons, the friendships, the very wise people that I found on this campus. I'm also glad that one of my sons and a granddaughter of mine have since had the same experience here. So I have many reasons to be thankful to my alma mater today. Vice-Chancellor, I know that everybody present would want me particularly to salute your leadership. You have steered Rhodes University through some of the stormiest years that university campuses have known in this country, and perhaps right across the world, and it has been primarily your steady hand on the tiller that has brought this university to where it is today, stronger than ever. And your invitation, I understand, to lead Rhodes for a further 6-year term is tribute to your deeply wise and sensible Of course, the campus today is unrecognizable. We got lost last night trying to find our accommodation. When I came onto this campus in 1957, Young Smuts Hall and Livingston House were the western edge of the campus. There was nothing past that except a rather smelly tanning factory up the hill. So the physical expansion over the decades has been breathtaking. And the same must be said of the breadth and the depth of academic enterprise. But I hope you'll forgive me. I'm old and old-fashioned, perhaps. I'm a picture of the past. But as an apartheid-era student of this university, you will understand why it is the diversity that I'm looking out upon today that gives me most joy. Yes, in my time we protested this injustice. It was all very polite. Vice-Chancellor Tom Olty told us to get into academic dress and led us down the high street and around the cathedral and back. And there was only one cop around. His name was Archie, and he had a motorbike. And in a very dignified way, he led our procession. protest marches changed a lot after that. But you know, the truth is this. We need to acknowledge that I and my fellow students lived in a bubble of privileged awakeness, from which most of the people in this hall today would have been excluded. Only a tiny handful of black students were allowed to register here by special permission of the Minister of the Interior. So we were insulated from our nation's most painful realities and from the majority of its beautiful people. And like all privilege, our privilege carried a curse. It damaged our humanness, which is what apartheid did to most white people, while of course doing so much more unbelievable destruction to people of colour. So, I'm just so overwhelmed by the difference, even if for many this rich tapestry of race and colour and ethnicity and nationality, perhaps for you now it's old hat. I hope we never underestimate its fundamental significance for the work of transformation. Bringing diverse South Africans together in one space is of course not in itself transformation, but it is only when we are in one space, in what I call the pain of togetherness, that the real work of transformation can begin. And it has begun. And there's no turning back. Thank God for that. Of course, there's some things which shouldn't change in areas of academic excellence, research and publishing. The smallest of South Africa's major universities continues to punch way above its weight. Rhodes has never compromised on the search for excellence and should never do so. You graduates behind me here are proof of this, and the scroll you will receive will testify to it. Something else I hope never changes is the fondness and the warmth with which old Rhodians speak about this place. There is also an indefinable spirit here, and in our memories, that is about more than just the fact that we belong to a fairly intimate student body and so on. The roots of this indefinable spirit are difficult to trace, but I suggest that they can be found in the mission values and graduate attributes statement of the university. It states that Rhodes seeks to create a just and sustainable society. My God, we still need that. Rhodes promotes wisdom, not just knowledge. We need that. In a quest to cultivate, listen to this, caring and engaged citizens. Listen well back there. And responsible, courageous, and ethical leaders. I don't have to remind you how desperately we need that. Now these laudable aspirations and aims instill enormous pride in me as an alumni. And I hope we pay deep attention to them. Many of this cohort who will graduate today will be moving on. And I have no doubt that you will rise, each one of you, to fulfill these aspirations as you carve out your career and become the kind of leaders, citizens, and persons that our nation is waiting for. Now, I've been told a couple of things. The one is don't be too long. And the other is that on occasions like this, I suppose, there is a demand for some advice for the graduates. And I find this quite intimidating. I'll tell you why. Because I read through each of your names and the subjects of your theses. Took me a long time. Didn't understand all the subjects of your theses. The breadth of the subjects, those I could understand, is mind-boggling. And so you are one very bright bunch. Who am I to give you any advice? And then I thought, wait for a moment. No matter how varied and sophisticated your future life, there is one common challenge that all of you will encounter, one which I do have a little experience with over my 84 years. It's called the human being. And you know, none of us can avoid them. Now, my faith tells me that they are made, each one of them, in the image of God. Now, I intend one day, and it's getting close now, to ask God whether God was perhaps having an off day, and some of them were made. If Desmond Tutu was still alive, you'd look at me and say, oh, Petros, Petros, Petros. Don't you know that every time you pass another person, you should genuflect? That is the wrong hand. Because you are passing the image of God. Okay, Desmond. I get it. But seriously, Bertrand Russell said something like, the only time that you're living is when you choose it. The only time you're alive is when you decide. Everything else is consequence. And you know, I've experienced that to be largely true. My life has been shaped by my decisions. One decision at a time. And I suggest so will yours. And here are some of the clues that help me make my choices in my work, in my relationships, and in sometimes a very real conflict and danger, and hopefully enabled me to stand for something. So here are some lessons from a long life. First of all, because the world is such a complex place, there are very few certainties. Find out what yours are, and then lean on them. They will not let you down. And then, if you, in spite of that, struggle sometimes to be clear about where the right course lies, then I want to give you advice from a famous, grumpy old Archbishop of Cape Town. His name was Geoffrey Clayton. And he said, you know, if the way isn't clear, just do the next right thing. The next right thing. It may not be large. It may be a very little thing. Do the next right thing, and things will open up. And then I want to say, if your conscience tells you some action is right, do it before counting the cost. Do the right thing, and let the consequences fall where they may. That's how courageous leaders are made. I also want you to remember that big doors swing on little hinges. So look for the seemingly insignificant in a relationship or a work problem, which might be the clue to it all, and give it your attention as much as to the big things. It may move the bigger parts, of the problem than you realize. And then something that I'm reminded of the great ethics professor Stanley Hauerwas at Duke University. He used to move into a class with a whole bunch of first-year ethics students, and all these kids would look up at him with their mouths open, waiting for all the wisdom to pour out of his mouth. And he'd look at them for a long time, and he would say, "Don't lie. Don't lie." And then he would walk out. You will never hear better advice than that, or more ethical advice than that. And while I'm about it, use words with care. They are sharp tools. They can either heal or they can do permanent harm. And never be afraid to apologize when you're wrong. It costs little and heals much. And if for any reason, and they do arise, you are divided from some person or group, let me quote a wonderful veteran of the American civil rights struggle. His name is Nelson Johnson. We worked together on the first Truth Commission in America together. He says, "Always walk toward the people you differ from, never away from them. No conflict was ever resolved at a distance. They may choose to walk away, but not without knowing that your mind and heart will remain open to them." Which takes me to the last one, which is just this. Never give up on anyone. Never give up on anyone. Nobody is beyond redemption. Oh, and then there's something else. Wait a minute. It's a little naughty, this one, you'll forgive me. I don't know if any of you graduates are intending to emigrate. I'm not going to ask you to put up your hands. Well, let me support you and say do it. But don't spend your resources on visas and massive travel costs and a new house and new jobs and schools for the kids and so on. I suggest rather you emigrate to a new mindset, which asks not where I will be most safe and comfortable in my future, but where am I most needed so that the beloved country can become that just and sustainable society that we all long for. Now, I'm not so old that I've forgotten the sense of sheer celebration that you and your loved ones will know when you cross this platform with your precious scroll in your hands. Enjoy it. But I hope you will also take in your hearts the invisible gifts Rhodes has given you. May they play their part as you navigate the sea of life ahead of you, one decision at a time. God bless you.